Hello there, everyone. Ted Lacksonen, the country thinker here, returning to our recitation of The Eagle Has Crashed. First off, I want to apologize that this particular recording and episode didn't get put up on Sunday like the schedule is supposed to be, but I was fighting a fairly nasty cold and my voice was absolutely shot. I just could not get it done. We'll get back to having these episodes appear on Sunday beginning again this weekend. Now today I want to tell you a little bit about the background research that went into The Eagle Has Crashed, and this will probably be the last preliminary information session I'm going to have, and in the future we're just going to jump more or less right into the story. But anyhow, I did a tremendous amount of research in preparing to write this novel. Everything from the federal budgets and how they work, historical patterns, inflation, unemployment levels, so on and so forth. I also looked at a lot of situations in which debt crises have taken place, how they played out, and so on and so forth. Now, virtually everything that takes place in The Eagle Has Crashed has occurred either here in the United States or somewhere in the world. And what's really disturbing is the number of events that I describe in the book that have come true since I had the storyline laid out in early 2010. Now, if you'd like to take a look at some of the research that I did in support of this book, you can go to my blog, countrythinker.com, and go to the tab that says The Eagle Has Crashed, and there you will find a link to the research. There are a lot of things in the book where people have said, wow, that just can't be true, that can't be right, and I direct them to that page and they take a look and a lot of people are frankly quite shocked at some of the things that go on in this world. So far in this story, you have met the Davises, the Calhouns, the Johansons, and a lot of the people in the White House administration. There are only a handful of more people for you to get to know, and here in this chapter you will get to know some more of them. And then it's going to become a matter of how things play out from that standpoint. So, without further ado, we are going to move on to the next chapter, which is May of the year 2029. Benny Johansen was in her office with the door closed at the law firm of Wells and Whitehurst in downtown Columbus. Her suit coat was hanging on the back of her leather desk chair, and she was leaning back in a white blouse and gray wool pants with her stocking feet crossed and on her desk. She repeatedly twirled and untwirled her long hair around a mechanical pencil. I know you're the regional airline czar, but your demands are not only unreasonable, they're in contravention of the law. Are you accusing me of breaking the law? A raspy woman's voice projected from the speakerphone. What I'm saying is that my clients are preferred creditors. They're first in line. That's the law. They've agreed to make some sacrifices. Everybody does in a reorganization. And they've given up more than is fair. But the baggage handlers and other unions haven't budged a bit, which is incredible when it's their ridiculous pensions that have put O'Hare in Chapter 11 in the first place. Listen, Miss Johansson, those workers are good, hard-working people. I'm not disputing that. Don't interrupt me. As I was saying, they're hard-working people who negotiated their contracts in good faith. O'Hare has a duty to live up to its contractual duties. Benny inhaled deeply and rubbed her face with her left hand. And my clients are good, hard-working investors, without whom O'Hare wouldn't exist. They, too, negotiated their investment deals in good faith. The point is that everyone has to make sacrifices to get the airline back on its feet. My clients are just asking that the labor force do its part to get the airline up and running again. You know, Mr. Johansson, folks in Washington, and Columbus too, are getting sick and tired of greedy speculators taking advantage of working-class folks. It's my job as regional airline czar to defend the workers from corrupt, selfish profit hounds. Benny pulled her feet from her desk, stomped them on the ground, and leaned forward, sending her long blonde hair swishing in front of her face. Corrupt? Selfish? How can you make those accusations? If it weren't for my clients, none of these people would even have a job. Listen, Miss Johansson, I know you think I'm being harsh, and I understand that you're doing your job, but I don't think you appreciate the difficult political situation you're in. Outside your office, your clients look like greedy speculators. They're not speculators. They're investors who have been involved with OAir for a long time, and they're not greedy. They've agreed to take a loss in this reorganization to try and get the airline running profitably, which is something that won't happen unless the unions agree to give up something of their benefits. There you go again, attacking the working folks. Benny grabbed a squishy crimson stress relief ball marked "Go Tide" and began squeezing it furiously. I'm not attacking the workers. I'm just saying they need to sacrifice like everyone else, like their fuel suppliers, for example. They've agreed to take a loss on some of their supply contracts. Miss Grenville, the judge is really hoping we can bring him a deal that everyone can live with. If the unions won't give anything up, he'll make them. Do you really think a bankruptcy judge is going to side with a bunch of foreign speculators over hardworking Americans? What does the fact that they're foreign have to do with it? A lot. This is politics, Miss Johansson. I've talked with Governor Coleman about it, and he agrees. It's in Ohio's best interest, and in America's best interest, that the government protect Ohio workers. Even a Republican governor has enough sense to understand that. Benny wondered where the czar had gotten her reputation for being reasonable. This is law, not politics, Miss Grenville. I understand that the governor's concerned about the jobs of his constituents, but frankly, his opinion doesn't really matter too much at this point. Oh, yes, it does. And I don't think the division between law and politics is as clear as you make it. He'll make it perfectly clear that this is about foreigners taking advantage of working-class Ohioans. Taking advantage? The OAir workers aren't making any sacrifices at all. You're being unreasonable again, Miss Johansson. I will send you a copy of our proposed agreement, and I want you to give it serious consideration. If your clients can't agree to this generous offer, I think they will deserve every bit of bad will that gets directed their way from the public. Miss Grenville, I strongly oppose your tactics here. Using the media as leverage for your preferred parties in a bankruptcy proceeding is out of line. I know we've been at this for 5 weeks, and the judge wants us to work out an agreement, but let me tell you right now, if the unions don't make any sacrifices, it is completely unacceptable. Very well then, Miss Johansson. Your clients will sleep in the bed that you're making for them. Don't think for a moment I won't use the media as well if you try your smear campaign. Good luck with that, Miss Johansson. There was a click, and Benny Johansson stood up and began pacing behind her chair with her pronounced brow and a deep scowl. The nerve of that czar, she said. This is an outrage. Nate North sat on the corner of the desk, cluttered with invoices and grease-smeared catalogs, in faded jeans and a dark blue golf shirt with North Fab embroidered on the left breast. He ran his right hand through his slicked back, salt and pepper hair, and pointed with his left through a large glass window out to the smoke and sparks and bending steel of his company's production area. So you want to move the TIG welders over there to make room for the new press brake? A lanky red-haired man in a dark blue work uniform with a name patch that said Tim leaned back in a faux leather chair with foam sticking out of its several cracks. Yup, he said. Tim pulled a piece of paper out of his shirt pocket, unfolded it, and set it on top of a cutting supply catalog. I made a sketch of the new shop layout here. North turned, picked up the drawing, and scanned it. All right, Tim, go for it. I made you foreman for a reason. We'll watch how the workflow goes and change it up if we have to. North stood and pulled his jeans up beneath his overhanging belly. The door into the company offices behind the foreman opened, and Cassie North emerged, a stout, middle-aged woman wearing a red Ohio State monogrammed polo-style shirt, her beefy thighs squeezed into designer jeans chosen by her teenage niece. There's a man here to see you, Nate. Who is it? A salesman? Tell him to make an appointment. Cassie tipped her head forward and stared at her husband through a lock of highlighted blonde hair. He squinted and huffed. Oh, all right. North slapped his foreman on the shoulder. Tim, work out a schedule of when we're going to get things moved around. North followed his wife through the door and puffed up his chest. Nate had learned his hatred for cold calls from his father and grandfather. He scanned the office that his wife shared with the secretary, but they were the only ones there. Cassie gave a scowl of displeasure and forcefully pointed into the adjoining room. Nate stomped heavily into his office in his leather steel-toed shoes and found a lean, brown-haired man in a black suit leaning against his desk. "Who the hell are you?" North demanded. The man smiled, slowly stood, and offered a hand to North. Joe Flanagan, United Metal Fabricators of America. Like many small business owners, North was too stubborn to ever work for someone else, and he found the thought of answering to a union boss repugnant. "You're with the union? Get the hell out of my office." Flanagan held up his hands. "Calm down, Mr. North. I came here to talk." "There's nothing to talk about. Get out of here before I break your neck." Flanagan smiled. "A lot of small companies like yours have bad information about unions. If I told you that I can make your company more competitive and make you a lot more money, wouldn't that be something you'd be interested in?" "Listen, pal, my workers don't want a union and they don't need one," North said, poking Flanagan in the chest. "I take care of them and they know it. Take my foreman, Tim. His father worked for my father and now he's working for me, and he's probably gonna until he retires. I don't know too many people who work at the same company their whole career anymore." "I'm not sure all your employees feel the same. And as I said before, it'd be a good business decision to bring in the UMF." "And have a union goon looking over every decision I make? Like where I should put my new press brake? Forget it. And what are you going to promise them? Higher wages? I'm working on thin profit margins as it is. Much as I'd like to, I can't afford to pay him anymore." "Don't worry, Mr. North," said Flanagan, undeterred. "I'm used to business owners flying off the handle when I first meet them. But I've left you some literature." He waved back to Nate's desk. "And when you calm down, I think you will be very impressed at how unionizing your workers could be the best business decision you ever make." North walked past Flanagan, bumping him hard with his shoulder. He picked up the packet of materials on his desk, tore them in half, and threw them into the garbage can. "North Fab is a union-free workplace, Mr. Flanagan. It always has been and always will be. My grandfather and father warned me about leeches like you, so don't think you can hypnotize me with some dog and pony show. The answer is no, and that's final." Flanagan smiled. "The machined and fabricated metal part czar would look favorably on North Fab if you worked with me." "Since when does anyone in Washington care what a fab shop in Columbus does?" "Come on, North. The folks in Washington are concerned with what happens everywhere in America." North nodded. "You're probably right, and that's what scares me." Flanagan smiled again. "Even if you don't care about Washington, I'm sure you're interested in what your workers think. I've talked to a couple of them, and it sounds like they're very interested in my services." North poked Flanagan in the chest with a finger. "Stay away from my workers, goddammit!" Flanagan raised his arms. "Easy there, North. I'm allowed to talk to them if I wish. That's the law." "It's a stupid law, and let them know that if they vote to unionize, I will fire all of them on the spot." "You can't do that either, Mr. North. Ohio is not a right-to-work state," Flanagan said, referring to the law that required employers to accept a union if the workers chose to join one. "And if you talk to any more of my workers, you'll find out that Ohio isn't a right-to-walk state either." Flanagan laughed. He knew North's type. Bullheaded with an inflated tough guy self-image. "You can fight this if you want, Mr. North, but you're going to lose. In the end, you'll be glad you lost." North pointed to the door. "Out! Now!" "Have a nice day, Mr. North, and we'll be in touch." Flanagan turned and walked out the door. Nate was pacing and punching his open hand when Cassie walked into the office. "What are we going to do, honey?" "Fight it as much as we can. We can't afford higher wages or more benefits, especially since our contracts were negotiated with things just as they are. What the hell would we do?" "I don't know, but as your bookkeeper, I pray every day that Tim keeps his shop running smoothly, because it wouldn't take much of a hiccup for a lot of our contracts to turn into losers, especially the big Honda deal we just landed. We don't have any more to offer them. We'll be bankrupt in no time if we paid higher wages." Nate pressed his fingers into his temples. "Man, I really love my workers, at least most of them. We really try to do the best we can for them." Cassie stroked his arm. "I know, honey. Heck, you've seen a lot of their babies on the day they were born, and who knows how many high school graduations we've gone to over the years." Nate crossed his arm and looked to the dirt-tracked carpet. "I can't see that we have any choice but to fight or give in. And the men of my family don't give up. I know. That's why I married you." She stood on the toes of her white tennis shoes and kissed him on the cheek.